I was diagnosed with cancer. I know, it sounds like a heavy start to a video about art, but trust me, it's a part of the story. When I heard those words and I was diagnosed and I saw the images on the screen of the x-rays, it felt like my world had shattered in that exact moment. Everything I thought I was working towards, everything I thought I had it figured out, it all felt pointless for a second. And anyone who's been through something life-changing or even just life-altering can relate to that feeling, that life gut-wrenching feeling, like you're not in control anymore. But here's the thing. After going through all of that, I realized something really important. I had to stop waiting for the perfect time. I didn't know how much time I had left, and I wasn't going to let fear hold me back anymore. I'm sure some of you know exactly what I mean. Woodworking or making in general has really taught me that problem solving is necessary, and woodworking always leads to a lot of problem solving, especially when it comes to the things I make. Here I thought, I could just wrap my colored pencils in tape and I should be good and I should be able to make this more efficient and, cut these in one go. Well, with all things I do, I learned real fast that was not the case. And I had to think of something else and change the way I was doing or going about this project. Mistakes happen, and I take all of my mistakes as learning opportunities. I like to fail. Failing leads to the opportunity to learn and grow and adapt and change your mindset on something that you thought you knew how to do. Let me be crystal clear here. I don't know what I'm doing half the time. I just say I have an idea. I take that idea, I take it to my shop, and I kind of just fumble around until something works, and then I take that knowledge for the next project. I realize, I could do it this way, but how can I make that better the next time? And that's exactly what happened with this project. I took these colored pencils thinking, I could just cut them up, put them a certain way, make it look cool, and go about that. But I chose instead to take a step back, realize I can't just jump at it all or nothing. I have to do one thing at a time, one step at a time. And I realized I have to cut each of these individually and separate them individually to make this really a special, unique project. But before all of this happens in my life, I always had dreams, just like a lot of people. You say to yourself, one day I'll do this, or I'll do that. And for me, I always had the vision, this goal to create something beautiful with wood and epoxy. I remember in high school when I first saw those videos of people making epoxy river tables, and I thought one day, just one day, I'll make that. One day I'll have the tools and the workshop or the space to actually turn something into a reality. Turning that one day into a reality, though, was a lot harder than I imagined, and it took a lot of money, a lot of time, and a lot of commitment to just problem solve and find a way to make it happen. One of the biggest surprises about woodworking and working with epoxy is just how much you don't know when you start. You can't just pick up a saw, a piece of wood, and some resin and expect everything to come together perfectly. In fact, when I first started, I made so many mistakes. Some small, some not so small. And I wasted a lot of my time and a lot of material just trying to understand what the heck I was getting myself into. I don't know about you, but I'm one of those people that tend to throw away the instructions when they come in the box, like presently and perfectly prepared for you. I tend to not read them and I try to just wing it. Maybe that's just the creative factor in me. It is not a science that you pick up overnight. Epoxy and woodworking they're both crafts. They require patience, practice, and continuous learning. And in this case, this project requires a lot of patience. I really can't fathom the idea that I put each one of these individual pencils in this mold one at a time. Here I was just thinking, I'm going to put these in, see how it looks, see how many pencils I'm really going to need to actually knock this project out. This turned into a very elaborate scheme, and I realized, oh, I just spent maybe 10 minutes, sped up here, obviously, to put this amount of pencils in. This is going to be an ordeal. I believe in learning, and learning the nuances of a craft is really essential in just everyday life. Becoming a subject matter expert in something such as this, epoxy and wood. There's times when I want to quit. There's times when I should say, I should probably just stop doing this because I'm wasting so much money and my time in trying to create something that I've not really seen before. Yeah, there's always people who have put wood in epoxy or epoxy with wood and things turn out great. But this wasn't really a commission or any sort of project other than for myself. This was a realization that I can do whatever I want with the time that I have and make something special. So let's jump into this project. I chose to use colored pencils for this one because for me, they represent something simple that a project can look awesome and be super creative with simple materials such as colored pencils and epoxy. You don't need expensive wood like black walnut or fancy grains to create something that feels special. This is a reminder that creativity doesn't come from what you have, it comes from what you can imagine and how much work you're willing to put into it. No one starts out perfect, and that's okay. Sometimes people think they need the best materials or the most expensive tools to make something worth sharing, but honestly, it's about what you do with what you've got. If you want to make something, just start. The rest will follow.
Do not get me wrong, though. Success is not an overnight thing. It does take years and months of patience practicing your craft to achieve it.
After putting down those first few pencils, I quickly realized I am well in over my head. I realized this project was going to require a massive amount of pencils and a massive amount of time. This is a huge time commitment for me, and thinking about the fact that I had to tape up pencils, colored pencils, multiple times and then run them through this bandsaw just to get the quantity needed. Like, for instance, I have a third of this project already on the table. I have to place all of these pencils individually just to get this project going. And here I was thinking at the time, oh, I'm just going to put these in to see what it looks like. I'm not going to take these out or start over. I'm just going to see what it looks like and go from there. But where am I going with all this? In my journey and my cancer journey, I learned there were a lot of things that I needed to address. There was a lot of things I wanted to do in life before I could say, oh, that's it. This is over. That's quits for me. Woodworking and just the problem solving aspect were one of those things. I've always found myself to be creative, and I like to throw a lot of things at the wall and see what sticks and see what things can change for the better, whether that's for my own skills or my own passions or my family at home. I believe the world is full of opportunity. You just have to really take the initiative and take the time to put into yourself to find out how to change something or make something better. Colored pencils are one of those things. It's a luxury, or it's a piece of wood that's already readily available. You don't have to go and shop for expensive black walnut, oak, maple. You don't have to go and do that. I am just simply showing the fact that I'm taking something that I've used to use every day as a kid and turning it into art or something I can look at all the time and just say, yeah, I created this and I can show that with pride every single day. Small details matter, and taking notice of the fact that I needed to put just a few more pencils in here to make the details matter so there's no gaps, so everything can be cohesive, is important. You can look at the broader picture and realize, oh, you could just leave those gaps and fill them in with resin, you'll be fine. But the bigger picture will be impacted. Now here comes the fun, but also tricky part, epoxy. Bond Craftor, as you see in this image, is actually something you can get readily available on Amazon. I'm using them. They sent me this product to try for this project, and it has turned out to be a pretty useful epoxy, and I'd recommend it for any of your epoxy needs. Just like a lot of brands out there, it's readily available, and this one is indeed readily available, being right on Amazon. But when I first started, I was terrified of messing up the use of epoxy because it felt so expensive, especially in the beginning when epoxy was like the most expensive part of any of my projects. It's one of those things that seems super simple on the surface, but you quickly realize it's not as straightforward as it looks because you really do need the chemical reaction to happen, and that chemical reaction requires a specific amount of epoxy to hardener. The ratios need to be just right, and if you mess it up, you can ruin the whole thing. It felt like there was so much room for failure. I think a lot of us can relate to that feeling, the fear that we're going to fail before we even try. So we don't even try because of that fear. Woodworking is something that always draws me back. It's the simple, super simple moments like this that are just so visually appealing to the eye, whether it's because it's a very peaceful operation or if it's just something that, is very calming. I find this as a therapeutic adventure, and I could find myself wearing epoxy for hours. Especially when you involve colors and various swirling patterns, it's a very peaceful operation. Epoxy is one of those things that can be damaged very easily, especially when you apply heat. I didn't really experience that on this first pour, but there was a large excess of air bubbles, partially probably due to the untreated wood or the unstabilized wood. Sure, I'm no expert when it comes to that, and it happens. I probably should have poured one thinner layer prior to this, but I didn't. I just went for it because I wanted to do my best in stabilizing the wood with this pour so I can prepare for the future pours ahead of time. Again, a best base is crucial when you're working with epoxy, and that foundation that I'm trying to create is essential here. But I knew I had to Q-tip all the air bubbles out, or excuse me, toothpick all the air bubbles out, and then move on from here because I knew everything was going to get planed down to a level surface for the final pour anyway. There were times in the beginning when I thought, okay, this is it. There is no more. There is no more future. There's no more workshop. There's no more wood. There's no more epoxy. No more dreams. Cancer is me. That's who I am, and this is how it's going to end. I realized there was no room for it. There was no room left for negativity. There was no room left for the pessimist view of this is it. I knew I was going to beat it. There was only a matter of time, and the dream of coming back to epoxy, this is the final and the best step of every project I do. When you remove a mold and you see what your labor has created, and it just opens the opportunity for future success. good mold release is the precursor of realizing you either have a good product or you have a really bad idea that's just not going to pan out. There were definitely issues that I saw here, but a mold release is the best part of any project, any epoxy project, because it shows that anything is possible when you combine wood and epoxy. Though my hobby has turned into just a buying adventure of buying various tools, it's not just about buying tools. It's about finding the right tool for the job and understanding how it can help you achieve that perfect finish. I started with very basic tools, but over time, that collection grew. I call it a collection because it really has just turned into like a trading card adventure where I sometimes just buy and sell products as they come in because I realize they're not suited anymore for me. I never had a dust collector. The fact that I have one now hooked up to this machine changed the game for me, and I am so fortunate just to keep adding to my collection. I started with a very simple set of rigid tools. Now, this rigid set had a sander, an impact gun, and a impact driver, and I didn't know what I was getting myself into when I bought them. I quickly realized I needed to invest in the mentality of buy once, cry once, because that mentality got me into the Milwaukee tool brand line, and I tend to not break those tools. The rigid ones I found to be very underpowered, and I couldn't actually get the job done with them. So, the next best thing was to invest in something I knew was going to help me, to make my time valuable again, and prove to me that I needed tools for the right job. DeWalt planer, dust collector, a jointer, all tools that I think are necessary if you're going to start doing something like this, where you're going to start woodworking or crafting on your own. And before you roast me down in the comments for my sander, I have gone through 3 sanders in my wood shop or workshop adventure. This one is probably on the last of its life. If you can see closely, it is very wobbly, which is very uncommon for a sander. But since this project didn't really call for detailed sanding, I just was using it in this instance before I do my next formal upgrade to another probably single-use sander. But like every woodworking thing, if you're a savvy person in woodworking, I went through the various grits of 80, 120, 220. I didn't really go to 320 because I knew there was going to be more to this project and the detail level wasn't going to need that further sanding, in my opinion. Where do I see myself in the future? I continuously think I'm going to promote myself on YouTube so I can share with the world my point of view and share how I see things and how I do things and why I do things for the reason I do. There's a lot of people I met along the way that are no longer with us who succumbed or passed away from cancer, and there is always going to be a part of me that thinks I'm alive. So it is my time to represent them and share with the world their memory. Project ideas for the future involve large-scale projects. I still have the desire to make that river epoxy table that I've dreamed of since I was a kid. I have the wood to make it. I had the wood, I think, for 4 years now, and I just haven't logistically planned to do it. My time is really eaten up during the day, but there will be attempts to make it in the future for sure. Though I have this great collection of tools, I still tend to find myself hand sanding, especially these intricate little details like the handle, where I don't find any shame in taking a piece of sandpaper and going at it. But finally, I skipped a step in the recording to give this first look at this board. I did pour a simple epoxy layer on the one side. I plan on pouring 2 layers in total on front and back to really capture the wood and make sure that there is no air bubbles, any impurities, anything like that. The next step was to not have that drippage on the bottom of the board. This is actually the top of the board because of the way it turned out. I think the whole layer where it's all the same depth and all that looked the best, but you could choose either side. Each side looks great in my opinion. But there was this little trick I used to do, and I learned that if you put tape down and the epoxy would fall onto that tape, you could just apply a little bit of heat, which you'll see later on, to get it off in one go. I, the man of many mistakes, realized that wasn't going to be the case here, and I actually ended up just using a razor blade to get it off later because I did not do it correctly. In my attempts of using a very makeshift table that's not level, it's on cups, I really wanted to make sure this final pour was level because I was noticing there was some discrepancies in the depth of the final layer on the top and bottom. If I just made it somewhat close, at least it'd be more better than just winging it. If I had a very unlevel surface, this project would kind of just fall into disarray, and it'd just be a matter of what happens, which is fine, especially when it's something just for me. But anything in life, if you practice perfection or you practice the same thing over and over, you'll get better at it eventually. And like I said in the very beginning, you live, you learn, and you kind of adapt and you change the way you view things to make something better. This was no simple project, obviously, but I did use almost the entire 2-liter or 1-liter kit of epoxy to accomplish all of this. There's a lot of things I make where I just put a simple top layer of epoxy on just the top, but in this case, because I was rubbing my hand on the pencils, I actually realized if I don't seal this the proper way, it's never going to properly cure. And it's never going to be safe from the elements or safe from damage. That wood on the bottom that would be exposed in this case would be ruined, eventually. I am a perfectionist, and that's probably the hardest thing to be when you're a woodworker or someone who likes to make things, because you want it and you have to have it perfect in order for it to really be part of your collection. But here's what I've learned. There's no growth without mistakes. That's how I got to where I am today, and making mistakes doesn't mean I failed, or even you failed. It just means you've learned something new. And I've learned a lot from messing up. I've learned a lot from cancer. And you know what? I'm very proud that I've messed up, that I've experienced what I've experienced. And if you're watching this and you feel like you're not good enough or that you're not moving fast enough, I get it. But please, don't let fear of failure stop you from doing something you love. And that's why I continuously come back no matter what kind of negative hate that I get from the comments. I always take them as an opportunity to learn and grow. Remember when I was explaining that woodworking or this whole crafting adventure is about problem solving? This is exactly one of those times. I am actually applying a ton of heat with the heat gun, not realizing that I am essentially crippling this top layer or making this top layer of epoxy virtually unusable. You'll see it in a little bit here, but I am basically creating a larger problem by changing the way I did the first layer. The first few layers of just stabilizing the wood, I didn't really apply that much heat because I didn't really care for the bubbles, but you can see with the light reflection here, all those indentations are air bubbles that are coming through that untreated wood. And I think I am my own worst enemy. I created those by applying too much heat.
Oh, darn. Unfortunately, the cured epoxy produced a lot of bubbles last night. So that rough texture that you're seeing is just bubbles on wood that didn't cure properly. So now I have the nice task of either fixing it or giving up. So let's sand it down and let's get going.
There was no turning back. This was one of those instances where I probably should have just planed the board down, started fresh with a new epoxy layer, and go from there. But I chose instead to sand it down and try to salvage as much as I could from this project. I used an astronomical amount of epoxy already up until this point, and I didn't really foresee myself making this a bigger deal. After sanding it for a couple layers, doing the normal grits, I realized there are a ton of air bubbles. And these air bubbles aren't just like surface level, some are below the original layer that are there. And I realized I either can make it look all good together or I'm going to have to go and just accept that there's some air bubbles. And ultimately, that's what I did because I didn't want to go back to that original layer. But I know there probably are a lot of you that might not or might be going through your own struggles, whether that's dealing with setbacks like this one or chasing a dream or simply trying something new. If you take one thing from this video, let it be this. It's okay to not have it all together. The most important thing is that you start and that you keep going. If you've been thinking about diving into something, whether it's making something, learning a new skill, or chasing a dream, just start. You do not need to be perfect, and you just need to try. As we get closer and closer to the end of this project, I realize there's not much left. And then I take a step back, and even while watching or reviewing the footage here that you're seeing on screen, I'm thinking about how far I've come. 8 years ago, my life changed. There will be a time in my life where I say it's been a decade, it's been 10 years since I went through cancer. Like, it's a crazy concept to think, but just not in this project that we've come over leaps and hurdles, but in life. You know, woodworking and epoxy are more than just hobbies for me. They're a way to connect. They're therapeutic in a sense that they help me create something bigger than myself and help put the pieces all back together. I didn't always know how to make this happen, and I still don't have all the answers, nor do most people, but I've learned to enjoy the process, the mistakes, and everything included and everything in between. That's the thing about making. Even as I pour this final layer of epoxy, I realize I'm putting the icing on the cake. It's not about having everything figured out before you start. It's about starting and then letting yourself enjoy the ride, knowing that every step forward, even if it's messy, is a step in the right direction. And if you recall in my previous portion of the video, this is where I was saying that tape is a barrier for the epoxy. So instead of trying to sand it down, you could just peel it off with some heat. For a little more foreshadowing, I realized I probably should have applied the tape to the chamfer and then just sand down the chamfer and go from there. But in this instance, I didn't, and I end up just having to sand it anyway.
this is a point where I was telling myself or asking myself, why the heck did I do it that way? As you saw in plenty of instances, I made my mistakes and I just tend to live with them. But I take those mistakes and I know how to deal with them in the future. And that's exactly what's going on here. Like in a lot of this video, just take the easiest way is just sometimes to run and gun and then sand it down later. And in this case, I just sanded it down. I didn't sand the entire thing. I just sanded the chamfer in efforts to hopefully polish a smaller layer later. And here it is. We're on the final steps, the final little details of what makes something great. It's a little bit over the top, obviously, but it's not just wood and epoxy. It's a reflection of life. It's a reflection of everything I've learned along the way, all the moments of failure and success, and most importantly, it's proof that you don't need fancy wood grains or expensive materials to make something beautiful. Epoxy is relatively affordable nowadays, and all you need is just a little bit of creativity or a dream and the willingness to learn and the willingness to just put yourself out there. I am not saying I am the best woodworker, crafter, maker, person in general, but I am someone who is willing to always put myself out there. And I'm always willing to put myself out there and say, I did something wrong, or I'm not good enough, or I'm not quite the person I want to be just yet. But what I've learned through my cancer journey, my life journey, is that you can be that person. You can be the difference that you want to see in the world. You can be someone different. You can change the world for what you want it to be. But the only thing that's stopping you is yourself. There's nothing saying you can't do this, you can't do that. I'm the spitting image of that. I took color pencils and epoxy and turned them into a beautiful piece of art that I'm going to cherish and remind myself every day, like, this is what you can do with just a little drive. In all of that and everything I just said, I just want to reiterate and state to you that nothing is impossible. Something is always possible and something is always achievable. Sometimes it takes some more money than others, and just nothing in life is impossible. You have to believe. Thank you so much for watching. And if you enjoyed this, don't forget to like and subscribe. I'd love to hear your stories and see what you're working on too. Remember, the journey is just as important as the destination. Until next time, keep creating and stay inspired.
If you've made it this far in the video, thank you so much. If you want to win this board or have a chance to win it, comment colors down in the comments below. Good luck.